Good afternoon and welcome to the episode of the Ad Drop Podcast. Well, you know him, you love him. It's Wednesday, the favorite son of El Segundo, California. Also, just the most renowned member of the Cal State Northridge family and the managing editor of Last Word on College Football, Tony Siracusa. Tone, how you doing, my man?
Brother Biggs, I'm doing well. You know what? It's we are at that time of year, just a couple of weeks from the season starting. The late nights have started, and I gotta tell you, man, long night last night doing some editing, doing some writing, but I owe some appreciation to the folks at HBO for helping me with the late nights, getting through the late nights and the work, because on one of the TVs in my office, while I'm sitting here working, they are running and all the way through every season, every episode of The Wire. So thank you to the folks at HBO for that, because it is, there you go. I got good company as I'm pulling the late night, early morning hours.
Would you say, as someone who is a fellow fan of the show, that Omar Little is a anti-hero?
Um, no, I'm not convinced. I think he was actually one of the more complex characters ever in dramatic television. Um, Clearly a bad dude, but how bad could he have been? He was just robbing the drug dealers. He wasn't hurting the citizens, just the drug dealers. And then when you find out, partway through episode one, and sorry for the spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, but when you find out he's gay, on top of being one of the most feared assassins in the game, you're like, wow, this is interesting. And this isn't giving away anything, but there's an episode, I don't know, somewhere down in probably season 3 or something, where he's walking into the local convenience store to get his box of Honey Nut Cheerios, and he's wearing silk pajamas. And it's just freaking hilarious. The complexities of the characters. And that's funny too when you watch it. I mean, the show is like 25 years old, something like 20, 25 years old. And you look at it now and you realize how many other things those cast members have done since then. Not very well known back then. The guy who played Wendell Pierce was well known. He'd been in a
Yes.
lot of shows and movies, and but it's funny. My wife and I talk about this. When you see them in something else, you refer to them by their name in The Wire.
Yes.
Wendell Pierce has done Shakespeare, and I look at the guy and I say, "Hey, there's Bunk," you know,
Yes. You did Othello.
right?
Yes.
Or I see the guy, "Hey, there's McNulty." Um,
Yes.
you can't. And Michael K. Williams, the late Michael K. Williams, had done tremendous work after The Wire, but he was still Omar. I mean, dude was just
Forever.
and it's not to denigrate the work they did later on, but the work they did for that show was so phenomenal that it really became a big part of who they are. It's yeah, it's just I don't think I may have told you, we actually have a picture. Mitzi and I have a picture of ourselves with Andre Royo, Bubs,
Oh,
Bubbles.
nice.
We were walking around shopping at the Grove over in West LA, and he was bopping around, and he was excited that anyone even recognized him. And I'm like, all these people are stopping and saying, "Hey, there's Bubs." We were the only ones with the guts to go up and talk to him and say, "Hey, can we get a picture?" And he was extremely accommodating. The guy had one of the most compelling characters. You could see you as downtrodden as he was, you couldn't help but root for the guy, man. He was always trying to do better. Um,
Yes.
but it was interesting too, watching some of the end of season one and going to season two, and bad news on the docks. That Sabatka guy, he's shady, and the
Yep.
Greeks. Again, don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it, but some shady dealings on the docks in West Baltimore. But it's interesting. I and you probably know this because you watched the show enough. It's the same theme song for all 5 seasons, but just 5 different
Just a different type
versions. Yeah,
version.
5
Yeah.
different versions of the same song. Tom Waits actually wrote the song for the show, but they didn't use his version of it until season 2. I actually have the season 1 version in my iTunes library. Do you
Nice.
remember who it was?
Oh God.
That's a tough one.
No, I'm drawing a
The
blank.
Blind Boys of Alabama, a
Oh, that's right.
1950s gospel group that is still around in different iterations. Um, and I've got that one. They had Tom Waits. They had the Neville brothers do the season
Yep.
3 version. Dommage did season 4, and Steve Earle did season 5, which I think gets underrated. A great season, because that was the one that focused on the newspapers and how the media covered the drug wars, and you had someone falsifying stories and things like that, and so much of it was at the Baltimore Sun. And so of course, kind of doing what I do around here, I love that season as well. So not a bad season in any of them, in any of the 5 seasons, but thanks to HBO for helping me during these late nights.
Agreed. Now, it's funny when I think of Omar, I think of all the TV I've watched, all the shows. There are only 2 characters. I'd say 3. Jackie Gleason as Ralph
Mm-hmm.
Cramden, Michael K. Williams as Omar
Mm-hmm.
Little, James Gandolfini as Tony
Sure.
Soprano. Those are the 3 characters that come to mind first that you cannot see anyone in TV history, but like they have done other stuff. Those are those 3 roles, like especially Soprano. Soprano and Omar. They were the hubs of the entire show, and they made the show work. Even when they weren't on the screen, the specter of them still hovered above it.
Absolutely. And again, you look at the cast of The Wire, and so many of them went on to do other things, and even some before. I mean, the guy who played, Avon Barksdale, was in Remember the Titans, before
Oh yeah, he was.
before The
Yeah.
Wire ever came on TV. Wood Harris is his name. So you see a little bit of that, but the work that these guys got after that is just staggering. And like you said, you get those signature roles. And Michael K. Williams, he did a lot of great things. He was Chalky White in Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, he
Yeah.
was.
And he was in another show, which I am losing my memory of the name of it, but it was with Christina Perkins from Mad Men, the redhead from Mad Men. She was in it, and I can't remember the name of the show now. But anyway, point being, it was just so incredibly compelling that you remember the episode where they had a line. The Barksdale family had a line on Omar, and they knew where he was going to be, and he was taking his grandmother to church, and they took shots at him anyway, and they hit her hat, and everybody, all of West Baltimore, had a meltdown. They violated the Sunday truce and shot off grandma's church crown. And it was like, even in the midst of all that, you got to have a code of ethics, right? You look at
Yes.
that. There are not. I'm sure a lot of people in Great Britain, because he'd done a lot of TV work there, but in America, not a lot of people knew Idris Elba until he was Stringer Bell. And then, of course, after
Yep.
that, he's just an amazing career. But he was Stringer Bell, man, and the guy who played I don't know if you remember the guy who played Brother Mouzone when the guy from the Nation of Islam in New York, Bowtie, came down to work with the
Yeah.
Barksdales for a while. I've seen him in tons of stuff, and I look and I'm like, look, man, it's Brother Mouzone.
It's just one of those shows that
Mm-hmm.
it holds up. Like it
It
could be
could
based today.
absolutely could. If you
And
get
it's
past
just
the idea that all their cell phones are flip phones. There are no smartphones
Yes.
yet. And there are still pay phones up in the low rises and the projects and whatever. Um, then yeah, the storylines absolutely hold up.
I guess we'll go
Yes,
Derek
sir.
Carr first. After a career as someone who covered the Raiders and followed the Raiders, after a career where he played football for the Raiders, just of less than successful results, but still a decent mind for the game. He's taken a special assistant role with UCLA. As someone who
Hmm.
has covered the Bruins and followed the Bruins for as long as you have, does this say that Bob Chesney is trying to kind of not just expand his department, but trying different things to try to either generate some sort of knowledge from somebody who played in the NFL who can possibly help the quarterbacks, or is this a recruiting aspect, or just kind of a combination of both?
I really don't think there's a lot of recruiting emphasis in this. There's a lot of PR emphasis in this. There's a lot of trying to boost the storylines. Um, unless anyone thinks that this comes out of nowhere, Derek Ray, who is the general manager for UCLA football, he and Derek Carr know each other from their time at Fresno State. Carr was a quarterback there when Ray was on the football staff as an assistant back in 2012, 2013. So there is a relationship there. Carr is going to be, remember now, there is no limits on your staff anymore. There used to be an NCAA limit on you can only have this many assistant coaches. Your front office staff literally consisted of administrative assistants and people making your hotel reservations for you and doing your photocopying of the playbook and things like that. There are no limits anymore. Thank you, Nick Saban, who started hiring people as the analyst for whatever, and they would sit up in their offices and watch game film and write reports. And over time, the NCAA got rid of limits on your staff. If you can afford them, you can have them. So Carr comes in doing this as a special assistant with an emphasis on the quarterbacks. So he's really going to be honing in on working with, and UCLA has a quarterback coach and they have an offensive coordinator. They have all these things, but I guess, when you've got someone like Derek Carr, who, and I know you said less than successful time with the Raiders, I would argue that wasn't always on Derek Carr, that they were less than successful.
Fair.
He had some good moments. But so he's going to work with Nico Amaleava and Madden, his younger brother, who is there also. And we'll see what happens. I think really more than anything, to your point about Bob Chesney making this move, it's a sales point for UCLA football, for the fan base, to say, look at the things we're trying. There are no limits on the options of what we're willing to try to have success. We are bringing in the winner of the 2013 Sammy Baugh Trophy for the best quarterback in college football. I don't know whatever happened to the Sammy Baugh Trophy. It is, if it even exists still, which I don't think it does. But we're bringing in this guy with his long NFL career. Look, I don't think Derek Carr is looking to become a college football coach. I don't think he's going to be around more than this season. If he gets an opportunity to go do something in the NFL, maybe he's, a scout or an assistant or something with whatever NFL franchise, he's going to leave, even if it's, end of October and you're only halfway through the season. This is a training camp hire to see what see how much he can improve the quarterbacks.
From a if looking at his career, like physically, talent wise, just on basis of athletic ability, the ability to throw, just
Hmm.
excellent player. Like had the ability, but it's just there's that mental piece that just was never there. Like would
Hmm.
run away from the rush, and it wasn't there. Like the rush would just not come close, and he'd be the
Right.
first person to fall or fumble. But as somebody who can teach the
Hmm.
Amalieva brothers, I can see it, and I like it. I truly like it because, like you said, it's Bob
Right.
Chesney trying something different. And for me, as observer from afar, UCLA college is better. College football is better when
Yeah,
UCLA is
sure. I
good.
mean, I think you look at some of the traditional programs. UCLA has been around, more than 100 years now. You can say that college football is better when both teams in LA, USC and UCLA, are good. It makes college football more compelling. I don't know if it does that with both of them being good in the Big Ten. I'm not sure. We haven't seen that yet, but maybe someday. When
Yeah,
Ohio State and Michigan are both good, when Florida State and Miami are both good, Auburn and Alabama, you get those where it's better off. It's Texas and Oklahoma. You get those where the game is better when those schools are good.
exactly. For me, it's like I think of UCLA being good when, it reminded me of Saturday afternoons, like
Sure.
watching football with my dad. It just because when you hear Keith Jackson's voice and you'd see
Hmm.
the sun kind of fading below, and the photos of the Rose Bowl, just things like that. It's nostalgic, and it's like you want to be good because it brings you back to a time. You know what?
Sure.
Happy memories, and it just one of those things that. Plus, just as a outside observer, it's just nice having them good because they were good for so much of
Hmm.
my
Sure.
actually
Look,
all of my
they
childhood.
went through a period with Bob Toledo as head coach and Cade McNown as the quarterback. People from they won 20 games in a row, which you don't see a lot of anymore. They were about a minute and 50 seconds in Miami away from going to the first ever BCS championship game. Um, that meltdown in Miami has haunted them since 1998 because they haven't been close ever since. But look, Jim Mora had some good years and some good games. Every UCLA fan remembers the comeback against Texas A&M. UCLA was down by 26, 27 points in the late in the third quarter and came back to win it. You have those games, you have those, but it's been rough. It was Moore's last year was rough. The Chip Kelly era was rough. The very truncated Deshaun Foster era was rough. And last year was, which started under Deshaun Foster, was just a bad year all around. There is a lot of hope within the UCLA fan base for Chesney. There may be a little too much hope, quite frankly. I think Chesney's a very good coach, and I think he can do good things at UCLA. But let's not expect miracles in year one. He hit the portal pretty hard. He did he did what they did at Indiana. Brought a lot of his James Madison guys with him. Um, and a lot of group of five players, group of six players. And so, we'll see. He has done a good job being the anti Chip Kelly, being out in the community, going to high schools, pitching the program, doing all the things that Chip did not do. The fan base seems very energized by it. When Deshaun Foster was given the job, there was a large split with UCLA fans. They loved Deshaun as a Bruin, but was he ready to be a head coach? Do you go from running backs coach to head coach? And was he ready? And he showed he wasn't. And then you went through the interim coaching, and should Jerry Neuheisel get some position? And there was this constant divide in the fan base. There is no divide over hiring Bob Chesney. It was greeted with great enthusiasm by the UCLA fan base. Like I said, a little too much so. Probably they're like, oh, he's built all of these programs. Not really. He inherited a good program at James Madison. But he did well with it, and he didn't really build that much before that. But it's okay. He's a good young coach. And I think if you do this right, you'll have him for many, many, many years. And so it's, we'll see. There's a significant talent gap at UCLA right now, especially compared to the rest of the Big Ten, to the top of the Big Ten, the top half of the Big Ten. So they are going to have to win some games you don't expect them to win just to get to that 6-6 or 7-5. They're going to have to pull off some pretty significant upsets. The Big Ten is extraordinarily tough, as you well know, as someone who's in the backyard of the Badgers. It's a tough conference. I saw the Football Writers Association, my people, my brethren, my brothers and
yes.
sisters, did the top 16 that they do every week.
Yep.
They had their first one, and when I was talking to some other reporters at fall camp on Monday or Tuesday of this week, I'm like, look, man, I'm not bagging on anybody, but I don't know how you put SC at number 14. And this isn't a pro UCLA or anti USC thing. This is I don't think Lincoln Riley survives past the end of this year at USC. You've got Jaden Mayava. You've got a really good quarterback, but he had a really good quarterback with Caleb before that. And what did it get him, right? I mean, he had Mayava last year, and they finished tied for 4th. And it is tied for 4th because it's a really good conference. And you can't have a mediocre high school recruiting class and a middle of the conference portal class and expect to compete. So again, it's I look at the top of the NFF poll, the National Football Foundation poll, and I get it and it makes sense. But I say all that to point out, if UCLA gets to 6-6 or 7-5, it's an amazing season. They've got a tough schedule. It's a tough conference. And there's a talent gap, but we'll see what Chesney can do.
I agree. Now, speaking of talent gap and just where apparently sometimes common sense tends to take a gap of a break, we got to talk about our new favorite. Not new favorite, but our Colorado judge and
sure.
her decisions and the update. Do you have an update to provide about the class of 22 and that decision and how it unfolds and what will happen next?
Sure. So last week we talked about, she had the Friday night ruling, right? Judge Charlotte Sweeney at the district court in Colorado, who granted the certification of the entire class of 2022 as the litigant class in this case, suing the NCAA over not being allowed to get that 5th year. And again, I got to say this again because I can't say it enough. The Ed O'Bannon lawsuit against the NCAA was also a class action suit. It was O'Bannon versus the NCAA, but it was class action on behalf of all college athletes for the right to own their name, image, and likeness. It took about 1.5 years to certify that litigation class. She did this in about 2.5 weeks. Like, I've never seen anything happen so quickly. But she felt compelled to do it quickly because These athletes, she believes, have the right to a 5th year of eligibility right now, in the very here and now, and you can't postpone it for a year or two to do the paperwork. So she had that Friday ruling. She walked back much of it in her Sunday explanation. There was no extra new portal. Schools could not go above their roster limits or their revenue sharing limits that were laid out in the House versus NCAA settlement. The NCAA, and here's the latest update, is the NCAA has filed its appeal to the 10th Circuit Court, and they have filed what's called an administrative appeal, which means they're going after her. They're going after Judge Sweeney, saying she didn't have the authority to do this. This decision wasn't right for these reasons, and this case precedent that we're putting in here. It's not just the legality of things; it's about how she handled the case. They have brought up in there how quickly she certified this class, and that it was done rather haphazardly. So it's an administrative appeal. In the meantime, while they were waiting to hear back from the 10th Circuit Court on the calendar and how this would be, they filed an appeal, or a motion rather, for a stay of the ruling, and they filed it with Judge Sweeney. This was done very intentionally. They could have filed it with the 10th Circuit Court and said, while you're deciding, we need an immediate stay. They did it with Sweeney, and I saw a lot of Twitter attorneys being like, "Oh, this is huge. She overturned it, or she ruled against it. She denied their motion for stay." And I scratched my head and I said, "Did we think she was going to overrule herself? Did we think she was going to have this monumental ruling and a 3-page explanation and then pump the brakes on her own ruling?" This was not huge that she denied it. And in fact, it works for the NCAA's appeal, saying by not pumping the brakes on this, it's chaos. It is absolute chaos. We only have 3 football players who have tried or are trying to use that 5th year of eligibility. 2 of them are with Indiana, and the third one, I honestly don't remember. But they're saying, all right, we have our, we weren't in the portal, because why would we still be in the portal from January? So we have filed utilizing the judicial waiver, which means we have to stay with the school where we were, thus going back to Indiana or wherever else. And that's fine. Seth Trimble, a basketball player, has been in the portal. His name was still in the portal from April, even though he was playing in the summer league and in the NBA summer league. He had not signed an NBA contract. His name was still in the portal, which by Judge Sweeney's ruling meant he was free to go anywhere he wanted. He didn't have to go back to the University of North Carolina, which is who he played for last year. And so he actually has committed and apparently signed to transfer to Louisville. Louisville had a lot more money left over in revenue sharing than did UNC, because most of these schools, they've got their roster, they've got their teams, they've allocated their money. All that stuff is done. And so he went to Louisville. They had more money. But again, if the 10th Circuit stands with the NCAA, he's going to be back doing whatever he was going to do after the summer league when he didn't get offered a contract by anybody. Those Indiana football players are going to be back doing, so they're in fall camp, which was part of her reason for wanting to do this so quickly. because we were right at the onset of fall camp for football. So Indiana had a roster space for a couple more guys, and these guys are playing for whatever money Indiana had left, but they could also be gone in a week. What's next is, as you and I record this on a Wednesday, the response for the appeal in the 10th Circuit Court, the response by the original plaintiffs, which is the athletes, the class of 2022 athletes, is due to the court by Friday afternoon. The court has agreed with the NCAA's request to do expedited hearings. In other words, they're shoving other stuff on their calendar aside to get this done because we're just a couple weeks away from the college football season. You've got basketball training camp, which will start soon. There is a legitimate calendar issue at stake. There has never been any clarification from the judge or the NCAA as to whether schools are going to get penalized for using players from the class of 2022 whom the NCAA has determined are ineligible. The judge has ruled that they are eligible. The 10th Circuit Court, if they rule with the NCAA, these guys aren't eligible. What happens if they play in games and you've knowingly used players that are ineligible? You may not have known that they would legally be determined to be ineligible, but you knew that that was a possibility, and you played them anyway. What happens to those teams? I think it would be horrible for the NCAA to punish those schools. I think it would be terrible. The NCAA should have let the class of 2022 in. You would have had to come out with this 5-for-5 ruling in March, April at the latest, right? Before you start getting senior day and graduation and all of those things. The decisions from players to enter the draft or, whatever the case may be, go play in the UFL or whatever, would have been different. And I feel like the NCAA held on to this decision about the 5-for-5 eligibility going forward. I kind of feel like they held on to it until the end of the school year so that it further justified them saying that's for going forward, not these people in the past. And I may be wrong, but it feels like the NCAA did that on purpose. But there is a calendar issue at stake. So the 10th Circuit Court has given the athletes, the counsel for the athletes, until Friday afternoon to respond to the appeal. If the NCAA wishes to respond to that response, they have until close of court on Monday. And then the 10th Circuit will sit and review and they will come up with their answer at some point next week.
It is going to be one of those starts of the college football season where not only are people going to be following stats, voting trends, but they're going to kind of keep an eye on the legal blotter to see what's happening. Speaking of the United States Senate and Congress, the legislative arm of the United States government is they're interesting. What is the latest, and what is your take on how you think things will unfold?
Well, when you and I spoke last week, there was a lot of late night work being put on by the Senate and the staffers trying to accommodate the Big Ten and the SEC in changes that they wanted in the Protect College Sports Act in order to be able to get it to a vote. And there were all of the usual suspects on social media. Oh, this thing was dead on arrival. It's never going to get to a vote. They'll never even get to the cloture motion. Well, they did get to the cloture motion. Didn't happen until Thursday. It went on to Friday. There was overwhelming approval of the cloture, which would put time restraints on what you could do in terms of further debate or questions or other issues with the bill. It would put strict time limits on it so that you could move on to a vote. But it needed to be unanimous to get that cloture motion through. And it was an 88-11 vote. Bearing in mind, we're only working with 99 senators right now because there's a elderly senator from Kentucky who isn't voting on anything right now. But so it had tremendous favorability, but not enough. So there were things getting added to the bill. And again, we went through all of the shock of, from some of the attorneys and, oh, this is huge. Josh Hawley, the Republican from Missouri, added an amendment to deal with trans athletes. Well, this wasn't a shock at all. He announced during the Commerce Committee hearings that he was going to do this when it came time to the final bill. So it wasn't a shock. Staffers that we talked to told us they knew that was coming. It wasn't a big deal. They were prepared for it. But the bill started to become what they call a Christmas tree. Everybody hanging their ornaments on it in order to get it passed. And what was already a moderately complex bill, I think it's about 171 pages, was becoming even more so with the amendments. And I know that Senator Kennedy, the Republican from Louisiana, the one who sounds like Foghorn Leghorn, he had decided that he wanted to put a hold on the bill. Now, what that means is when you put a hold on it, you're stopping the clock. There is no debate, no conversation. There's nothing, because he wanted time to research whether he could add an amendment which would put a cap on the increase in ticket prices that schools could charge for sports. You couldn't increase more than 4% in any given year. Okay, I get it. But you knew the bill was coming into cloture session. How did you not have this researched already? And the answer is because he really wanted to slow down the progress of the bill. So look, they could have gotten a vote in on Saturday, but the support was dropping. I had someone from a senator's office text me, say they had a solid 70 when the week started, 70 yes votes. They were down to 65. And they worried about the amendment process going on and causing some more departures from the yes side of it. So it's there was no vote. It gets held over until September, when the Senate returns after their 3-week recess. There is now a concerted effort from Senators Murphy and Booker to rally more Democrats to oppose it. Booker, in particular, has come out and said he doesn't think it's pro-athlete enough. It doesn't do enough to favor the athletes. I got issues with that. There's a lot of talk about, well, it's capping their income. It's really not. It leaves the NIL wide open. It caps what the school can spend on this, but it also is capping what the school can spend on coaches. And they're firing, because we know the schools have put out a lot of money in buyouts of coaches. And it now puts in thresholds that if your school makes, I think, 80 million in sports revenue, which is pretty much all of them in the Power Four conferences, you can only spend a certain percentage on the buyout. The rest of it, because that's the school's money. And that money came from tuitions and student fees and the state budget, if it's a public school, all of these other things. The rest of it has to come from outside sources to pay off this ridiculous contract that you agreed to. So there are caps on many things. I think what you have to look at is the issue of employment or becoming employees stayed open. They actually changed it from the Commerce Committee version, which said they cannot become employees at any point. They took that out and decided to leave that for the federal courts to determine someday. So I don't see how you look at this and say it's anti-athlete. I really don't. I think it's anti-ACC, anti-Big 12, because it made it easier for schools to leave those conferences to go to the Big 10 or SEC. And depending upon what their contracts are with the conference. But I don't think this is going to come to a vote now. I really don't. I know John Thune is setting a specific date in September for the vote. So, as you just pointed out, as we're in the early stages of the season, we're going to be talking about the Senate bill. We are not going to be free and clear of the quagmire that exists in all of this. I think to me, and I could be wrong. I'm not going to be certain attorneys who speak with such certainty about all of it and are absolutists about this. I think you had to take advantage of the momentum that you had and force the vote as best you could. Now that these guys have gone home, some of them are up for re-election, so they're campaigning. I think you come back in 3 weeks and there's not a lot of momentum left. I think it becomes a lot is going to happen in this country in the next 3 weeks, because in my last 10 years, your last 10 years of life, a lot seems to happen every week. And there will be other topics to take a priority over this. And Senate Majority Leader Thune has said, no, we got a lot of the other stuff out of the way that was on the table needing votes. This will be a priority. I don't know that I think that's easier said than done. And if you pass it, if it does pass, I am here to tell you it will not get a vote in the House this year. Because the House, and again, we're dealing with a lot of folks on social media who are certainly free to opine on this. Goodness knows I do. But who don't know how the legislative process works. The House has almost the entire month of October off because, of course, every seat in the House is up for re-election every 2 years. So they have almost the entire, so you get this clear, the Senate on whatever it is, second week of September, you still have to reconcile with the House. You still have to deal with whether there is still a protest from the Congressional Black Caucus or not. You still have all of those elements, whatever revisions the House wants to put in it. There is no chance you're going to get a vote on this unless it's through the recess provisions, which is after the elections in November. When they come back in mid to late November, half of them have lost their House seats. And they come back and hang out, and they can vote and do all of those things, but you generally don't get a vote on anything significant before the new House takes their seats on January 2nd of the following year. And then the bill really rests on, what does the House look like? What's the makeup of the House? Does this have the support that maybe it had, maybe it didn't, tough to say. So I think by not getting the bill through before the August recess, I think they really stacked the deck against the bill.
Agreed. It seems like it's gonna probably drag
Yeah.
on even
And my
after the
and my
midterms.
question is
Now,
then
last
what?
question.
Let's say it doesn't
Mm,
pass. Then what? And I had this conversation, or me actually wagging my finger at people on social media. Okay, the bill, you don't like the bill. That's great. What else you got? There is nothing else. There is no other viable bill which is sitting out there. There is no other work in progress. As I pointed out to one of our attorney friends the other day, there currently is nobody running college sports. Yeah, the NCAA still exists, and yeah, they're still in charge of March Madness and all the other postseason tournaments that aren't D1 football or FBS football. But there's nobody running college sports. They get sued every week. And the lawsuits in state court over eligibility are having a great deal of success when you find the local judges. So they're like, our hands are off until you provide us with a roadmap of how we can legally do this. There's nobody running college sports. If you don't pass this, you get another year, 2, maybe 3 years until there's more legislation of nobody running college sports.
now,
Yeah,
our
sure.
last question. Let me ask you this: as uh, someone who played
Mhm.
little league, someone who played youth sports, and just someone who now has spent a great deal of time covering sports, where do you think, if you had to sum it up, the where youth sports has failed as far as being able to not just become like a teaching arm instead of like a lot of travel sports, your football, your basketball, your baseball tend to be more of a money grab for some of these travel teams. Where do you think youth sports has
The
gone
parents.
astray?
I mean, the parents. It really is that look. Um, when I played little league, when I played youth basketball, um, I had 1 year of youth football, 3 concussions in one season, by the way, in youth football. Yeah, I got knocked out, literally
Oh man.
unconscious one game. They had to bring the smelling salts out, but look, back then there was no concussion. You got your bell rung and you got the smelling salts. I spent the rest of the first half on the sidelines and went back out and played fullback and linebacker in the second half because that's what you did. I had a concussion. I'd been knocked out cold, but I went back out and played because that's what you did. The baseball, the youth basketball, where, by the way, I played 1 year for my father. Disastrous. Hated every minute of it. But anyway, um, the parent involvement is excessive. The money for youth sports is excessive. I saw a post by Eric Sonheimer, who is an amazing columnist for the LA Times, has been covering prep sports for the LA Times. I'm going to say about 40 years, maybe longer. I may be shortchanging him. He is the guru of that. And he wrote a column about how there are now a lot of high schools who are charging for you to have photo credentials, even if you're a newspaper or whatever the case may be, a digital media outlet. They are charging you to have photo credentials and sideline access. And the reason is because they started getting so many people at these schools who were allowed to be down taking video, which they were then using to promote the players, right? Because you've got all these people who are running their recruiting services. I can get you looked at by high D1 schools. I can get you that D1 scholarship. And they sign these people as clients for thousands of dollars. Parents are paying thousands of dollars to be part of the Joe Smith football recruiting profile, right? and he's going to get you out there, but he's going to charge the parents a boatload of money. And in most cases, it's not worth a dime, much less the thousands of dollars. But the parents are doing it. They are overly desperate. They have put so much stock in that my kid's going to play D1 football or D1 basketball. And so Joe Smith Recruiting is putting some intern on the sidelines with a video camera and with still photos to get stuff of their clients. So schools have come to start charging to do this because people are making money off of them. You've got the parents who, and this is a thing that I hear a lot from coaches. I hear a lot from former players who are old that, get your kid in multiple sports. It's better for them. It's better if, I agree to a point, as everything. As you and I have been doing this show, I don't know what, 3 years now, probably. Yes. I am just ridiculous when it comes to the details are everything. The granular is everything. If you're a football player, I agree. Go play something else during the off season. Go run track or go do the field events in a track and field, team, or go do something else during the off season. Totally agree, right? If you are a swimmer, which is an individual sport, there are swimming events all year round. And how you did in your high school swim team is virtually irrelevant to college coaches. It's how you did in sanctioned meets, whether it's with the state or national sanctioned meets. Mm-hmm. Tennis, right? I think we know that one firsthand in this household. Yes. She played 4 years of high school tennis because she wanted to have teammates for a while and see what that was like, having spent all of those years, as out there on your own on the USTA circuit, having occasional doubles partners that she knew, but mostly playing singles. How you do in your high school tennis couldn't matter less. There's the UTR, the Universal Tennis Ranking, which shows how you did. You can actually look it up, and it would show my daughter how she did against players ranked in the top 25, what her record was against players ranked in the top 50, and so on and so forth. And you create that's what mattered. And in order to have that, you got to play all year round. You don't have time to be a part-time swimmer or a part-time gymnast or a part-time tennis player. The things that are individual sports, you got to play all year round. So I think that there's a little bit of, overhyping the diversity. If you can, you should. Daughter decided one spring to take a few months off from the tennis circuit and played. She did track and field. She got talked into doing the discus. Won the league championship and trashed her shoulder, and it cost her a few more weeks, on the tennis circuit, but whatever. But the point being, the parents get so ingrained in this. We learned very early on in tennis, the parents are some of the worst human beings you'll ever meet.
Oh God, yes.
Because this was firm USTA rules. It was the same for the 9-year-olds as the 17-year-olds. No coaching. They are out there on their own. She can bring her. Yep. She can bring her private coach with her, who can talk to her in between matches, but no coaching during a match. Not from the parents, not from a coach, not from anybody. And you learned because you would see it. Parents would develop hand signals that they would show out to their player out on the court that would mean something. There was a guy one time, his daughter was Russian, born and raised in the U.S.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned,
but she could speak Russian, and granddad was yelling things and trying to tell people, oh, I'm just congratulating her. Yeah, that's crap. Nobody believes you. We would see USTA officials actually throw the parents out of matches. Like, you're banned. for the rest of the weekend. You are banned from this tournament. If you come back, we will disqualify your player. And they get red flagged, which means any other tournament you show up in, there is a note that you've been tossed from another tournament.
Wow.
The parents are the worst. Let your kids play the sport.
Yes.
Let them do what they're
Agreed.
going to do. We never put pressure on ours that you have to do. We said, if you're going to do it, you're going to work hard and you're going to bust your rear end. Otherwise, don't do it. And it's fine. And it's fine if you don't. If you want to, because she also played the piano and the clarinet, you want to do those instead? Great. We're with you. But whatever it is you're going to do, you're going to work your butt off at it. And it got her into college.
Exactly.
I think too many parents look at it as everything is riding on this, and it isn't.
Yes, and I hate that. As someone who coaches youth sports, I hate parents are the worst part of my job. I can deal with a hard-headed player. I can deal with a hard-headed official. Parents are the worst, the absolute bane of my existence. The less I say to them, like, all I want to say is, this is when the game is. This is what we need. Please be here at this time.
Yep, absolutely.
Like,
I'll tell you a funny parent story. When I was a senior in high school, a bunch of a small handful of the high school varsity athletes have been hired to be Little League umpires for El Segundo Little League games, from the minors all the way up to, the 12-year-olds, the majors, right? And I was in charge. I was a TA for the math teacher, who was also the varsity football coach, who was in charge of scheduling the players for their umpiring assignments. So that was my job, right? And you get paid a certain amount to be the home plate umpire and a certain amount to be the base umpire. And there were probably, 24 games a week to cover. And I had a kid, 12 years old, didn't like my balls and strike calls from behind the plate, right? And started losing his patience. And so I called a timeout, warned his coach, you got to calm him down, man. All right, enough of this. Calm him down. The kid beans the next batter in the head. I got no choice but to toss him. I got no choice. I'm leaning up against the fence, and I got no idea who this kid is. He's just a hot-headed kid. In between innings, I'm leaning up against the fence, trying to catch a break here. Some parent comes down and says, "Tough game today, huh?" And I said, you know what? Due respect, the parents are too involved. I'm getting too much yelling from the parents. I said, the parents need to get a grip on themselves. And I said, so if you don't mind returning to your seat. Well, it not only turned out to be that pitcher's father, but it turned out to be the president of the Little League for the kid I just tossed out.
I don't mean to cut this short, but I gotta take care of a family situation real quick. Can you tell people how to interact with you on social media?
You can go to lastwordonsports.com and go to the college football link. You can go to Twitter. You can go to Blue Sky. You can go to our Facebook page. We are knee deep in training camp all over the country. We got 2.5 weeks left till the season starts.
Thank you so much again, Tone, for joining me on this episode of on the Ad Drop